The wind comes over the ridge at 3 in the morning, and it finds every part of you. Your arms, your back, the skin behind your knees. You are wrapped in hide, and you are still shaking. Because under that hide, there is almost nothing. No coat, no pelt, just bare skin stretched over bone, out here in a cold that kills sleeping animals. Then you touch your face, and your face is warm. There's thick hair growing out of your jaw, coarse, dense, alive. The only real fur left anywhere on your body, and it's growing in the one place that makes no sense. You are standing in the middle of an ice age, freezing from your shoulders down, and the only part of you that evolution decided to insulate is your chin. Why? Everything else went. The fur that covered your ancestors for millions of years vanished. It didn't fade slowly out of laziness. It was stripped away because keeping it would have killed you. Every hair that disappeared for a reason. So there has to be a reason this one stayed. And when scientists went looking for it, the answer they found had almost nothing to do with warmth. Here's the part that breaks the whole story. Your face never lost its fur. Not because it was forgotten, not because the process ran out of time. The hair on a man's jaw is not a leftover patch of an old coat that the body forgot to clear away. It's newer than that. The beard is not what remains of the fur. The beard is something the body was told to build after the fur was already gone. That means somewhere back in deep time, in a world where every scrap of body hair was being burned off because it was dangerous to keep, one part of the human face was doing the opposite. It was growing thicker, darker, longer, only on half the population, only after a certain age. Something wanted it there, and whatever that something was, it was strong enough to override the same force that had already shaved the rest of you bare. Start with the loss, because the loss is what makes the survival strange. You are the only naked ape. Every other primate alive is wrapped in fur. Gorillas, chimps, baboons, all of them. You are the odd one. And being the odd one has a price. You get cold at night. You burn in the sun. You need fire and skins just to sleep outdoors. So the trade had to be worth it. It was. Your skin carries somewhere between 2 and 5 million sweat glands. No other animal on the planet comes close to that number for its size. A horse sweats, a dog pants. Neither can do what you do. You can dump heat straight off your skin while you are still moving. Now picture what that buys you on an open plain. Midday, the sun sitting flat on the grass. An antelope explodes away from you at 4 times your speed, and you don't sprint after it. You jog. You keep it in sight. It runs, stops, pants, tries to cool itself in the shade, and you arrive before it has finished cooling. So it runs again and again. Each time it starts hotter than the last. You are not faster. You are just harder to stop. After an hour or two of this, the animal's body temperature climbs past what it can survive, and it goes down, not from a wound, from heat. You walk up to something that could have outrun you all day, and you finish it standing over it, still sweating. Fur would have made that impossible. Wet fur traps heat instead of releasing it. A furred human running in that sun cooks from the inside, so the coat had to go, and it went. Which leaves one very uncomfortable question hanging over your own face. If body hair was so deadly that evolution burned it off your entire frame, why did it let a thick, heat-trapping patch survive right next to your mouth? Here's how they proved the fur really did vanish, and it's not from bones. It's from lice. Lice are picky. They live on one kind of hair, in one kind of place, and they don't wander. Head lice hold on to scalp hair. A separate kind evolved to live in clothing, And there's a third kind that lives in coarse body hair lower down. That third one is the strange one. Its closest relative doesn't live on humans at all. It lives on gorillas, which means at some point that louse jumped species and found a home on a human body. And it could only do that if there was a patch of coarse hair waiting for it, separated from the hair up top by a stretch of open skin. Bare skin created a border, and that border split one parasite into two. The lice that ride your body are a clock. Read their DNA, count the differences, and you get a rough date for when human hair stopped being one continuous coat and became islands. That date is old, deep, deep time, long before the first cave paintings, long before anyone shaped a stone into a spear tip. So the coat was already broken up into patches when your ancestors were still figuring out fire. But now the mystery gets worse instead of better, because hair is exactly what parasites want. Lice, ticks, mites, fleas, all of them need something to grip. Bare skin starves them. Every patch of hair you keep is a place for something to breed against your skin, next to your blood, laying eggs in the dark. And of all the places on a human body, the beard sits closest to your eyes, your nose, and your open mouth. You kept a parasite habitat on the entrance to your own face. That's not a small cost, that's a serious one. And in evolution, when something expensive survives, it isn't luck. It means something was paying for it. If you're enjoying digging into the forgotten reasons your body is built the way it is, subscribe now, because the next discovery is the one that flips this entire story upside down. Here's the thing almost nobody knows about human hairlessness. You didn't lose your hair, you lost the ability to see it. Count the hair follicles on a patch of human skin, and count them on a chimp. The numbers come out close. You are carrying roughly the same equipment as a furred ape. The follicles are still there, arranged across nearly every inch of you. Look at your forearm in strong light and you'll see them. Fine, short, pale threads that never grow long and never grow thick. That's the whole trick. Human skin didn't delete its fur, it shrank it. Every follicle got an instruction to produce a hair so small and so colorless that it does nothing and traps no heat. Which changes the question completely. Nothing on your face survived a purge. Your face received a different instruction from the rest of your skin. On your arms and back, the order was shrink. On your jaw, the order was grow. Same body, same DNA, opposite commands. So who is giving the orders, and why does one square of skin under your mouth get a completely different message from everywhere else? The messenger is a hormone, and its behavior is genuinely bizarre. Androgens flood through a young man's blood and reach every follicle on his body at once. Same chemical, same dose, but the follicles don't agree on what it means. On the jaw, the signal says thicken. Follicles that were producing invisible fluff switch over and start pushing out coarse, pigmented hair. On the chest and belly, the same signal says the same thing, more weakly. And on the top of the scalp, that identical signal can say the opposite, shrink, retreat. In many men, the hair that made it to the crown starts thinning under the exact hormone that is thickening the beard on the way past. One chemical, 3 different regions, 3 different responses. That only happens if each patch of skin was tuned separately over a long time by something that cared about the result. Skin cells on the jaw carry a different setting than skin cells 3 inches higher on the cheek. That setting had to be built. And here's the detail that gives the whole game away. The beard doesn't arrive when a boy becomes able to father a child. It shows up years later. It comes in patchy at first, thin along the jawline, and it can take until a man is in his late 20s or 30s before it fills out completely. Nature does not usually make you wait a decade for a survival tool. So why is this one on a delay? Think about what a delayed feature actually announces. If a trait only shows up after years of adult life, then anyone who has it has, by definition, survived those years. And in the world we're talking about, surviving years was not a given. Predators, injuries that turned bad, hunts that went wrong, cold seasons that emptied out a camp. Making it from your teens into full adulthood meant you had done something right over and over for a long time. You could not fake that. A young man could be tall, he could be loud, he could carry the best spear in the group, but he could not grow years he hadn't lived. The face told the truth before anyone opened their mouth. Now flip it around and stand in the body of the boy who doesn't have one yet. You're old enough to hunt. You carry your own spear and you take your own risks. But your face is smooth, and every man in that camp can see it from across the fire. When food is divided, you're read as young. When a decision gets made, your voice sits under theirs. Not because you're weak, because your face hasn't finished making its case. So you wait. Years of it, watching the growth come in slowly along the jaw, knowing that when it fills, the way people look at you changes without a single word being said. Now walk into a camp of strangers with that on your chin. Nobody there knows your name. Nobody knows what you've killed or what you've survived. There's no shared language and no way to explain yourself. But everyone can read your face across the fire in 1 second. And that's when the real question lands. A signal is only worth growing if somebody is reading it. So who was actually looking? The obvious answer is the one most people jump to: women. Half the population grows a beard, half doesn't. When a trait splits down the middle like that, it usually means it's involved in choosing a mate, and the assumption is that women drove it. But the evidence there is a mess. When researchers ran the test properly, showing the same faces with and without facial hair, the attractiveness ratings came back all over the place. Some groups preferred a heavy beard, some preferred stubble, some preferred a clean face. The preferences swung with fashion, with region, with which faces people had been looking at that month. If a beard existed purely to win women, you would expect the pull to be steady across the board. It isn't. But one result held firm no matter which group they tested, and it had nothing to do with attraction. Bearded faces were rated as older, stronger, more dominant, more aggressive, more likely to win a fight. And the men in the study rated it that way even harder than the women did. That's the twist. The signal isn't aimed across the fire at a woman, it's aimed straight at the man on the other side of the fire. Now put yourself back inside that camp and understand what's actually at stake. There are no laws, no court, no one to arrest anybody. When two men clash over food, over a woman, over an insult, the fight happens right there in front of everyone, with hands and stones and whatever is close. And there is no surgeon waiting afterward. A broken jaw means you can't chew. Can't chew means you can't eat. In a world where you need every calorie you can get, a fight you lose badly can slowly kill you weeks after it ends. So the smartest thing a man can do is win the fight without having it. That's what a threat display is. Every dangerous animal that can bluff does. The cat arches its back. The gorilla flares its shoulders. The point is to make the other one back down before anyone gets hurt. Because even the winner of a real fight leaves with damage. Humans don't have manes or crests. What we have is the face. Grow thick, dark hair around a jaw, and something changes in how that jaw reads. It looks wider. It looks heavier. The bottom edge of the face drops lower than the bone actually sits, and the whole head reads as bigger than it is. You are not stronger. You just look more expensive to fight. And in a world with no doctors, looking expensive to fight is worth more than winning. But there's a version of this that goes further than looking, and it turns out the beard might not just be a bluff. Some researchers decided to stop arguing about it and hit something. They built a stand-in for a human jaw, bone-like composite underneath, skin over the top. Then they made two versions. One kept its thick, natural fleece. The other was sheared down close to the skin. Then they dropped weight onto both and measured what the material underneath actually absorbed. The furred one performed noticeably better. The hair spread the force out and soaked up part of the energy before it reached the layer standing in for bone. The sheared one passed more of the hit straight through. Now consider where men get hit. In real human violence, the jaw is one of the most commonly broken bones in the body. It's the target. It's what a fist finds. It sits out at the front of the head with nothing over it but skin, and it is exactly the patch that grows the thickest hair. That's a strange coincidence for a body that shaved everything else. Nobody is claiming a beard turns a face into armor. A hard enough hit breaks bone through anything. But if the hair took even a fraction off the impact, then across thousands of generations of men trading blows, the ones with denser faces would have walked away intact slightly more often. Slightly more often is all evolution ever needs. Except this leaves us with an obvious problem. If the beard was that useful, why do we have proof that ancient men were tearing it off their own faces? Because they were. Long before metal, people had blades that could shave. A fresh flake, struck off a piece of obsidian, comes off with an edge finer than most modern steel. Flint does the same job. Cold, hard, and terrifyingly sharp. And you can strike a new one whenever the old one dulls. Other groups didn't cut it at all. They pulled it. Shells worked as tweezers. 2 edges, a pinch, and the hair comes out by the root. It's slow and it hurts. And people did it anyway. Over and over, on their own faces. Once metal arrives, the evidence turns from likely to undeniable. Copper razors show up in graves in Egypt, worn from use and buried with their owners. Priests there took it further and removed hair from the entire body on a schedule, because a face and a scalp with hair on them were considered unclean in the temple. And there's a detail hiding in that which is easy to miss. None of these people had a clear mirror. Scraping a blade across your own jaw, blind, is not something you do alone. Somebody else held the edge. Somebody else worked around your throat with a piece of stone sharp enough to open it. Whoever shaved you was a person you trusted completely, and the shave itself proved it in front of everyone. So we have 2 things that shouldn't both be true. A face that grows hair on purpose, and men who spent real time, real pain, and real tools removing it. Which means the hair on your jaw is not a fixed rule. It's a choice with 2 settings. So what did shaving buy that keeping it didn't? The first answer is the one nobody thinks about until it happens to them. A beard is a handle. Get in close with another man and a fistful of jaw hair is the easiest grip on a human body. It turns your head wherever the other man wants it to go, and your neck follows. If your head is being steered, you are not fighting anymore. You are being moved. Greek accounts tell a story about exactly this. Soldiers ordered to go clean-shaven before battle, so that in the crush of close fighting, there was nothing on the face for an enemy hand to close around. Whether or not that order happened the way it's told, the logic is real. Anyone who has fought at grappling distance understands it immediately. The second answer is the one that lives in your skin. Hair holds things. It holds oil, sweat, food, smoke, dirt, and anything small enough to lay eggs in it. Around a mouth, that matters. A face full of hair next to an open wound, in a group sleeping shoulder to shoulder in a shelter, is a place infection likes. So now the beard looks like a bad deal on both sides. It gives an enemy a grip, and it gives parasites a home. And that is exactly what makes the next part so interesting. Because in biology, an expensive signal isn't a design flaw, it's the entire point. Here's the rule that explains half the strange things animals do. A signal only works if it's hard to fake. If it costs nothing to display, then the weakest, sickest individual in the group can display it too, and the signal stops meaning anything. So the reliable signals are the ones that hurt to carry. A heavy set of antlers is dangerous to grow and drags through the trees. A bright tail slows an animal down and makes it easy to spot. Both survive anyway because carrying the cost is the proof. Only an individual doing genuinely well can afford the handicap. Now apply that to a face. A full beard costs you protein. It costs you a grip an enemy can use. It costs you a home for parasites right next to your eyes. Wearing all of that out in the open in a world that was trying very hard to kill you is a statement. It says, look how much I can waste and still be standing here. That's not decoration. That's a receipt. And the group could read it in more detail than you'd think. Look closely at what a beard actually shows the people around you. Patchy, thin, dull growth is not just a look. Hair is one of the first things a body abandons when it's under strain. Starve, get sick, carry a heavy parasite load, and the follicles get downgraded before anything more important does. Growth slows, color goes flat. Thick, even, glossy hair means the body underneath had enough to spare. The skin in that area is also loaded with glands that put out oil and scent, and hair holds that scent close instead of letting the wind take it. A face like that carried information to anyone standing near you, whether you meant it to or not. There's one more thing that hair did, and it's easy to overlook because it seems too simple. It told people who you were. In a group where everyone wore the same skins, moved the same way, and worked in the same low light, the face was the only reliable label. Shape, density, color, the line it cut along the jaw. No two grew the same. A figure coming over a rise at distance could be named by the shape of his face before anyone could make out his eyes. And then there's color. Gray hair shows up on the face early. It arrives before the story is over. In a world where most people did not get many decades, a gray beard was not a sign of decline. It was a sign that this person had beaten the odds longer than almost anyone, which means the same patch of skin was carrying two different messages at once, depending on its color. Dark meant strength, gray meant survival. And in a camp with no writing and no records, the second one was worth more than the first. Think about what an old man's face meant to a group that stored nothing. Every root to water in a bad year, every plant that could be eaten, and every one that killed. Which valley flooded? Which slope held snow? What people did the last time the herds didn't come? None of that was written anywhere. It lived in the heads of the few people old enough to have seen it happen. When one of them died, all of it went with him. So the gray face wasn't respected out of politeness. It was respected because it was the group's only copy. A man whose beard had turned had lived through cycles the young men had never seen, and that made his opinion the difference between eating and starving during the next bad season. A young man with a black beard was saying he was strong. An old man with a white one was saying he already knew how this ends. That's a lot of meaning to carry on one patch of skin, and it explains why a group would put up with the cost of it. But it still leaves something unexplained. If this were a human invention, why does the rest of the animal world keep landing on the same idea? Look sideways at your relatives and the pattern jumps out. A lion grows a mane. Only the males. It comes in late, it costs energy, it makes the animal hotter in a climate that is already brutal, and it tells every rival on the plain how well that lion has been living before either of them moves. An orangutan male grows wide pads out from the sides of his face. Not all of them do. The ones that hold territory develop them, and the ones living under a stronger male often stay smooth for years. The face changes to match the position. A mandrill runs color down its muzzle, and the brightness rises and falls with rank. Every one of these sits on the head. Every one appears in males. Every one arrives after the animal is already capable of breeding, and not one of them makes the animal better at hunting, climbing, or fighting. They exist to be looked at. None of it is armor, and none of it helps the animal eat. A rival reads the ornament in the first second of contact and adjusts what he is willing to risk. And most of the time, the whole encounter is settled right there, before either animal has taken a single step forward. So the hair on a man's jaw isn't a human oddity. It's the primate version of an old habit. When an animal needs to settle disputes without bleeding for them, it grows the answer where the argument happens. Which raises the last question about the thing itself. Out of the whole head, why did the growth land where it landed? Look at where the hair actually goes. It doesn't cover the face evenly. It rings the mouth, along the top lip, down the sides, across the chin, out along the jaw. The eyes stay clear. The forehead stays clear. The growth traces a circle around the one opening in your face that matters most. That placement isn't random, because the mouth is the part everyone watches. It's where your food goes, so it's where sickness shows. It's how you speak. And in a fight, it's the part that opens, pulls back, and shows teeth, which is the oldest threat display any mammal has. Frame that opening in thick, dark hair, and everything it does reads louder. Teeth look whiter against it. The mouth looks larger. An expression that might have been missed at 20 paces now carries. Then there's what sits directly under that skin. Your jaw hinges there, and it's the heaviest working bone in your face. It's also the one an opponent aims at. So the hair grew over the strongest bone, around the loudest signal, on the most watched part of the body. If you were designing a place to hang a message where nobody could avoid reading it, you would pick exactly that spot. And yet the same species that grew it doesn't grow it the same way everywhere, which is the piece that finally settles the argument. Beard growth is not the same everywhere, and it never has been. Ancient populations in different parts of the world carried noticeably different levels of facial hair. Some grew heavy, dense beards, others grew far lighter growth, and it wasn't about climate in the simple way you'd expect. Cold regions weren't automatically the hairy ones. One of the clearest cases sits in East Asia. A change in a single gene spread widely through that region in deep time, and it rewrote a whole bundle of things at once. Scalp hair got thicker and straighter, sweat glands increased. The shape of the front teeth changed, leaving a distinctive scooped back that shows up clearly in ancient skulls. The same package came with lighter body and facial hair. That single change swept through an entire population, which only happens when carrying it was an advantage. Somebody's ancestors did better with a face that grew less. And that's the real proof. If a beard were a hard requirement for keeping a human face alive, it couldn't vary like that. You can't have optional armor. But if the beard is a signal, then it can shift from group to group because the audience is different and the fashion is different, and the message doesn't have to be identical everywhere. Which brings us back to the excuse everyone reaches for first, and it's time to deal with it because it's wrong. Ask most people why men have beards and they'll say warmth. It's the obvious answer. It's also the one that doesn't survive contact with the evidence. When the warming effect of facial hair was actually measured, the gain turned out to be small. Not zero, but nothing close to what a coat of fur would give you. Hair works as insulation when it's dense enough to trap a still layer of air across a large surface. A beard covers a narrow strip on one side of your head. Meanwhile, the rest of you is bare, and the rest of you is most of you. If the point were surviving cold, evolution had a far better option available. Turn the fur back on across the torso and the arms, where the heat is actually leaving. That's the surface that matters. Instead, it stayed bare, and the tiny patch on the front of the head got the thick growth. There's also a problem specific to cold air. Breath condenses in a beard. It freezes there. In real cold, hair around the mouth loads up with ice, and ice against your skin is not insulation. It pulls heat out. And the last piece kills the theory outright. Women lived through the same winters, same wind, same nights, same shelters. If facial hair were the answer to cold, there'd be no reason to give it to only half the people freezing. So it was never about the weather. It was about being seen. And once people had tools and materials, they stopped leaving that to chance. Look at what ancient artists chose to carve. In Mesopotamia, powerful figures show up with long beards worked into tight, deliberate rows of curls. That is not what hair does on its own. Someone spent hours setting it that way, with oil and heat and combing. And then someone else spent weeks carving it into stone so it would be remembered. They were not recording a fact about male biology. They were recording status. Egypt takes it to the point of absurdity, and this is the detail that settles the whole argument. Egyptian rulers shaved. They removed their hair, then strapped on a false beard, a manufactured object held on with cords, worn during ceremonies as a symbol of authority. When a woman took the throne, she wore one too, carved into her statues exactly as her male predecessors wore theirs. Sit with what that means. They stripped off the real hair and attached a fake version because the shape mattered more than the hair. The beard had become pure signal, detachable, transferable, something you could put on to say power and take off when the ceremony ended, which is the clearest possible proof of what it had been doing on human faces all along. And if you want the final proof that the hair was a message, look at what people did to their enemies with it. Cutting a man's beard off against his will shows up again and again in the ancient world, and it wasn't done for hygiene. Envoys were seized and half their faces shaved before being sent home. The point was not to hurt them. The point was to send them back through their own streets wearing the insult where nobody could miss it. Nothing was damaged, no blood was spilled, and it worked every time, because everyone understood what a face was saying. So here's the answer to the question you started with. You didn't keep facial hair because your fur ran out. The fur was gone. The instruction to grow was written after the fact on one specific patch of skin aimed at one specific audience. Your body stopped covering itself the moment covering itself became dangerous. Every hair that trapped heat on a running body was a liability, and the liability was removed. Fast, thoroughly, everywhere. Everywhere except the front of your head. Because the front of your head wasn't doing the same job as the rest of you. Your chest carried you, your legs chased, your skin cooled you, but your face had to talk to other people, and it had to do it before you were close enough for words, before anyone knew your name, before there was anything like a rule to protect you. The beard wasn't insulation. It was the first thing humans wore that carried a message. It said how old you were. It said how well you'd been eating. It said what happened to the last man who tried you. And it said all of it across a clearing, in silence, in the half-second before someone decided whether to approach or walk away. Every other hair on your body was there to keep the weather off. This one was there to keep other people off. And that's why it survived a purge that took everything else. Not because it kept you warm, because it kept you from having to fight. Your ancestors lost their fur so they could outrun the animals. They kept their faces to outlast each other.